Afternoon as it is now, and welcome to Planning Committee at Cambridge City Council on Wednesday the 29th of July. We're starting at approximately 12:30 in the afternoon as we had another meeting this morning. I will roll call councillors alphabetically by surname so the public can see who they are. I'm Councillor Katie Porrer and I chair this committee and I represent Market Ward in the city centre. Councillor Smart, are you present? Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Bagent?
This is me.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher?
Hello, I'm Councillor Fisher.
Thank you very much. Councillor Griffin?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth?
I'm present, Chair.
And we also have apologies from Councillor Dryden, Councillor Todd Jones, and I believe that Councillor Clough is speaking as a ward councillor for this, so he will not participate in the debate or vote on the item, but you will see him appear as ward councillor later. So we are still quorate. We need a minimum of 3 councillors to be quorate, and we have 6 of us here. The officers permanently at the table with me for this meeting are our delivery manager, Toby Williams.
Good afternoon.
Our legal advisor, Vanessa Blaine.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Our committee manager, Matt Hussey.
Good afternoon.
And Dan Calley, who is producing the meeting.
Afternoon.
And with Chris from our AV team. Other officers and public speakers will join us throughout the course of the meeting, and I will introduce them as appropriate. As I said, if anyone can't hear me, please do wave your hand, and we will aim to take a short break at some point, potentially, given that I appreciate everyone is drinking a lot of water today due to the heat. Can everybody present in the room note that everything on your desk or your lap could be broadcast, your phone, your laptop, or any notes you have with you? So please be careful if you have anything confidential, because we can't guarantee that that won't appear on the live stream. If you are joining on the Teams meeting, please make sure you keep your camera and microphone muted until you are asked to speak. And if the fire alarm sounds, please follow officers who will leave the room and exit via the Pease Hill staircase. If anyone needs toilets, there are some downstairs or directly underneath us, or the more accessible ones are on this level just to the left of the chamber. If anyone wants to speak on the live stream, please raise your hand in the chat column, but please do not put anything in the notes of the chat column, as this is visible to everyone and will be recorded and could be released under Freedom of Information or data protection requests. If a report officer drops out from the committee, although we have Tom here in person today for this one, the senior officer, so Toby, would take on the presentation and report and respond to questions or recommend deferral as appropriate. The process for each planning application will be that the case officer will give an introduction. We will take questions of clarification from members about what the officers presented on. Registered public speakers will be invited to have their say, with 3 minutes for those speaking in objection and 3 minutes for those in favour. And a bell will ring by Matt 30 seconds before the end, just so you know when you're coming to the end of your time. The committee will then discuss and debate the item, but members of the public cannot join in with the debate at that point. At the end of the deliberation, I will sum up with the planning delivery manager to confirm the officer recommendation and any amendments made during the debate, and then we will vote by a show of hands. Only those present in the room may vote or propose and second recommendations. And as I said, I will call short breaks as appropriate. If anyone does need one, please just raise your hand and let me know. It is hot, so please do keep hydrated. There are fans around and the windows are open, so I hope it's bearable. Could I please ask any members if they have any declarations of interest? Councillor Griffin. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? I don't think so.
It's a little bit quiet.
Hello. Can you hear me now? It is lit up, but I don't think you can hear me. Can you hear me? No. The audience can't hear me.
Right, we're just turning up the microphone.
How about that? Ah, very nice. Thank you. So I have 3 maybe conflicts. I'm a member of CAMCycle, and I see that they have a representation on this. I'm also a member of the university, but perhaps more importantly, I have attended many conferences and programs at both the mathematics department and the Newton Institute. And so I understand the need for accommodation of visiting scientists and mathematicians, etc. So I mean, I'm sympathetic to that, you know, the need for accommodating people who are participating in these sometimes 6 months long programs and so on at the Newton Institute.
Are you saying, Councillor Griffin, that you're unfettered in this, though? You're declaring
I
this?
believe I am,
Okay.
but I would ask Vanessa for any advice on that.
Vanessa?
Councillor Griffin, you can be predisposed, but you cannot be predetermined or biased. So your involvement, has it led you to... Can you not hear? I'm so sorry. Let's try again. Better? Okay, sorry. I'll repeat what I said. So you can be predisposed, and you'll hear the debate, but you cannot be predetermined, and you cannot be biased. So I can't make that decision for you. What we have to establish is if any of your involvement or your thought process has led you to think along the lines of, I'm happy with this application now.
I think I am going to recuse myself then.
So for the record, you don't wish to vote on this item? Or, okay, thank you very much. We'd ask you in that case to leave the table. You're welcome to stay in the room, of course. Can we just note that, please, Matt, for the minutes? And as I mentioned earlier, Councillor Clough is already sitting in the public space, but he won't be sitting today because he's appearing as a ward councillor and therefore isn't involved in the debate. Just to note, there are no minutes today, so nothing to approve or not. Sorry, this microphone keeps jumping in and out a bit. Oh, apologies, Councillor Bajan. How could I forget you?
Sorry, I too am a member of CamCycle. I'm not a member of the university, and I'm a member of ACORN.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bajan. We'll make sure that's noted. Okay, we're going to now move on to agenda item 4, Wolfson Court, which is 25/0482 FUL. So we are joined by public speakers. So I'm just going to check you're here. We have Professor Geoffrey Meeks. Yeah, I can see you, and thank you very much. And Dr. Jacqueline Meeks. And we have the agent as well, I believe. James, thank you very much. We'll come to you shortly. Once you've spoken, public speakers are very welcome to stay and watch the debate, but obviously, as I mentioned before, can't participate after that point. I'll now hand over to Tom, our planning officer for this application, to start his presentation. Oh, there's a hand up at the back. Can you not hear? Oh. I beg your pardon. Yes, separate to the public speakers, we have 2 ward councillors here. I have Councillor Clough and Councillor Rees. I don't know which order you want to speak in. I will leave that up to you to decide. Thank you very much. Apologies, I missed you off. Go ahead, Tom.
I'll have to see if this worked. Can people hear me? Okay. Okay, just want to clarify. Very aware of the temperature in here, so I will try to keep this presentation as concise as possible whilst going into the required level of detail. Just bear with me, please. So I just want to double check with members that you can see my slide deck on the screen and you can hear me sufficiently. Perfect. So, as Chair's just indicated, the application is at Wolfson Court, so that's 25/04832/full. The proposal is for the demolition and pre-construction access road from Madingley Road. Officers are recommending the application for approval, subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement. Members will have noted that an update sheet was sent on Monday, just outlining some additional neighbour comments from the Joint Objection Group, a letter to the Chair of Planning Committee from the Joint Objection Group, additional comments from the Public Art Officer, an amendment to paragraph 23.4. In the officer's report, it incorrectly indicated the site was at low vulnerability. It is medium to high vulnerability of crime. There was a revision to paragraph 11.24, and as you can note on the slide, there's an amendment to a number of paragraphs indicating that the total number of rooms for academic staff and visitors is 41, not 49. And then there was clarity that academic staff and visitors combined will not occupy more than 41 rooms at any one time. And then there was an amendment to the heads of terms. So I'll briefly run through the main material considerations. This is not strictly limited to these, but it's just an idea for members of the main considerations. That's the principle of development, so the student accommodation need, an intensification of the use, the impact on the amenity of neighbouring occupiers and future occupiers, the impact of the proposal on designated heritage assets, highway safety, sustainability, trees, ecology. As indicated, that we're not limited to those, but that is just the main considerations in my opinion. So I'll just get my pointer sorted so that you can see clearly where I'm talking about. So as members can see, the application is the site edged in red. It's owned by St John's College, and obviously the area in blue is also owned by the applicant. It would have a new access road to the north up onto Madingley Road. The existing built form on the site is student accommodation, which varies in height up to 3 stories at the moment. You've got residential dwellings along Clarkson Road just up to the south. You've got the Sir Isaac Institute of Mathematics to the west, and then you've got St John's School to the east. There are a number of listed buildings. I say number, there's 2. So you've got Saxmeadham, which is just where my pointer is now. That's a grade 2 listed building. And then you've got number 3 Clarkson Road, which is a grade 2 listed building also. There's also a cul-de-sac of accommodation, residential property, called Cockcroft Place, and that is just down to the southeast. This is just an aerial image of exactly what I've just explained. So I just thought I'd touch on as well. So to the top here is number 15 Madingley Road, just adjacent, sorry my pointer's being incredibly slow. Just up here to is 15 Madingley Road, and adjacent to it is 15A Madingley Road, which is a former garage building which has been turned into student accommodation. That is to be demolished in order to accommodate the new pedestrian access and temporary construction access up to Madingley Road. Just thought I'd indicate some of the site constraints. So the site is located within the West Cambridge, is being incredibly slow. Down here, that's just some protected trees. They're the only trees within the site that are afforded a TPO. And I just thought I'd point out the 3 Clarkson Road, which is the grade 2 listed building, and then Saxmeadham House, which is just to the east here, which is also grade 2 listed. This slide just shows the existing and proposed site plan. So there's an existing nursery building just located outside of the site. That building is remaining. So the proposal is to demolish the entirety of the buildings on site and then to replace them with individual student accommodation buildings, which I'll go through in detail. And then you've got the pedestrian footpath that runs to the north of the site. The access to the south is maintained. Just briefly go through some slides for members that weren't able to attend the site visit previously. So this is a panoramic shot of the frontage of Clarkson Road. So you've got some low-level bicycle storage along this section. Then you've got the existing 3-storey built form on the eastern boundary. There's a large tree in the middle here, obviously. And then you've got some additional sort of outriggers, which just form some sheltered bike storage, centrally located. And then this is just from the other half of the frontage. So similarly to the eastern side, on the western side, there is built form. 3 stories. It's all student accommodation at present, and then there's a green frontage which is supported by, there's a wall behind that green frontage. So you've got the existing western aspect, so that is continuous built form all the way through. It ranges between 3.5, 3 stories in height. It's obviously institutional in appearance, and the same is on the eastern aspect. These trees that you can see within this photo are the ones that form part of that tree protection order. This is the just an image of the additional extension which was built in the 90s to increase the student accommodation on the site. And then this is from a view towards the rear and the green space that currently exists. And then just in shot to the left is the library. And this is just another image of the library building. This is from the western portion of the site. And then this is just another image of the green space, although it's obviously suffered from the sun. But the nursery building is just to the left of this image, and that's the back end of the library building. To the sort of top of this image, that is where the proposed new pedestrian access will run through. These are just some images of 15 and 15A Madingley Road. So number 15 is the building to the left. That is currently used as, that's a house of multiple occupation, is used for student accommodation at present. And the garage building, or former garage building, is this building here. That is to be demolished, and the new pathway, pedestrian footpath, will run through the site up past number 15. If I then take you to the central image, it will take you then up through this part here, and then take you to the far right image, and then run alongside that boundary and connect to the site. This is just an image of the street view from 15 Madingley Road and 15A Madingley Road. And then this is another image just for sort of clarity. The entranceway would be somewhere in roughly where the pointer is. Just some images of the building internals, just for clarity. So officers have gone through significant pre-application process with the applicants and their architects and their associated team throughout the process. So the first pre-application advice took place in November 2024, and we've worked continuously with them, overcoming and attempting to overcome concerns that officers have raised throughout the process, having numerous workshops on detailed and specific issues in order to get to where we are now. So the site is quite large, so members are going to have to bear with me here, because I've tried to make this as clear as possible as to what the proposed site will look like. So as members can see in front, this is the proposed site layout. So there's the buildings A to E, so they do sort of run anti-clockwise, with the proposed footpath to the north. So building A, which is located in the northeast corner, the buildings are similar in their appearance in that they're sort of villa college style accommodation, which I think members will have seen on other schemes throughout the city. They're 3.5 stories in height, with protruding dormers on the first floor level, but with a range of architectural features. With solar panels, and there is also plant and other aspects for renewable energy on the roof. Once again, this is just building A. And then this is a CGI image which might put the building into a bit more context than those elevational images. So this is from the Madingley Road footpath or pedestrian route, which would come from the north. So this is looking south towards the site, and that is building A. So you have a communal space, communal kitchen on the ground floor, and obviously then with rooms above. There's also a sustainable drainage feature and bridge going over that, and obviously with additional planting and landscaping throughout the site. So this is building B. So this is on the western portion of the site. Once again, the building is similar in its typology and scale. So I won't dwell too long on these images, but if members do want me to come back to them later, I'm more than happy to. And then these are just the varying elevations. But I've sort of tried to helpfully add some CGI images which were located in the design and access statement provided by the applicant. So this is within the central open space and central square. So you've got building B to the top of this image. Obviously, you've got the open space, sort of more formalized areas of open space centrally within the image. So you go on to building C. Once again, similar in terms of its design, typology, and scale. And then this is views of buildings B and C. So building C is this building to the right-hand side, and then building B is to the north. This is once again situated as part of the landscaped and open space, area of open space. And once again, this is just images of, there's more than just building C and B in this image, because building B is to the right, but to the left is building C. Once again, just to point out that there are sort of shared social spaces on the ground floor. And moving to building D. So this is one of the more prominent buildings. Obviously this front, just go into a bit more detail. This fronts Clarkson Road. It's similar in height to the existing built form. Same for building B. It is taller, but it is similar in its style. So this is building C. So this is where the Porter's Lodge would be located, in the front of this building. And then this is CGI off Clarkson Road. So once again, this involves more than just buildings D. But as you can see, this is the just an image of that. The Porter's Lodge is located at the front. And this is another image of building D. So this is from the eastern portion of the site, where there is currently car parking and the existing access road. So the building, once again, is taking a similar typology, but is broken up throughout, so it doesn't offer as harsh a viewpoint along that western boundary. There's also cycle parking located to the west as well. Lastly, building E. This is the smaller of all the properties, and this is located behind that large tree that I indicated in the photos. That is the tree in said photo that I was discussing. So this is just a frontage of building E, which is to the right-hand side, and then building D to the left. And then once again, this is just a CGI image of that building, just indicating its similar form and typology to the rest of the site. Same again. This is the CGI image of the new proposed access from Madingley Road. So obviously there would be planting. This building here to the left is number 15. So there would be visitor cycle parking out the front. It would be fully landscaped and integrated into the scheme in order to obviously to be as inviting as possible. This is just an image of the proposed ground floor layout. The reason why I've sort of put this on is just to highlight the cycle parking. So there is a cycle parking bay to the front up here, replacing some of the car parking spaces. And then just to the right hand here, there is a large cycle parking building here as well. There are also cycle parking located throughout the site, such as on buildings E and C, but much of the cycle parking is contained within the, in this image, to the top and the right-hand side. There's also visitor cycle parking to the front of the site, and there's also some additional parking up here just near the access as well. Just like to point out as well, there is some additional open space as well that's being created as part of the proposal. So there's a woodland walk, which is located, I'm going to say at the bottom, but it is the eastern side of this image, just to allow students a slightly more peaceful and secluded walk through. And once again, this is just indicating the second floor plans, just to show the typical layout of the buildings. Just indicating the typical floor layout. So each building has accessible rooms, with the majority of rooms being accessed through lifts in each of the properties. In addition to this, the accessible rooms are also split out throughout the different floors so that they're not all just put in one location. The key is quite hard to sort of indicate, but there is a mix of different communal spaces and different bedrooms throughout the site, just to obviously provide high quality of accommodation for students. Blocks are typically in 6 to 8 bedrooms at any one point. The applicant and obviously the local authority have worked quite hard in order to ensure excessive and inclusive design. So out of the 408 rooms, 19 of those rooms are fully accessible. I'm not going to go into all this detail in terms of accessibility, but if members do want to come back to it at a point, I'm more than happy to have this slide back up, but it is part of the plans pack as well and is indicated within the officer's report. In terms of sustainability, once again, officers have had many detailed meetings with the applicant, particularly in regards to the retention of buildings and the options available rather than the complete demolition and then rebuild. So there's been a full options assessment that's been carried out, and we've worked quite hard and incredibly detailed with the applicant to understand what the constraints are of each option, especially within the first particular pre-apps. We're really trying to keep as much on site as possible, but through the process it was quite evident that that would come with some significant challenges, and it was sort of, we can go into it in more detail later if required, and Emma, who's the sustainability officer, is available online as well should there be any additional questions regarding that. But officers are content that the options assessment has pointed us into this direction, and it is the best case for everyone. Just sort of recap on that. So the proposal isn't required to meet Net Carbon Zero 2050, but the proposal would meet BREEAM Excellent. In terms of construction vehicle routes, so this is taken from the outline construction management plan. This is entirely indicative, just to make that clear to members. The documents that were submitted are outline and offers. There is a condition requiring the submission of details. This information was provided by the applicant in order to indicate their thinking regarding this, but I just thought it would be useful to include. So as indicated, the site would use a temporary construction access to reduce the number of construction vehicles using Clarkson Road. A number of mitigation measures have been outlined in the Construction Environmental Management Plan. However, as indicated, this is indicative and further details are to be secured by a condition. The proposal is not considered to result in harm to neighbours as a result of excessive noise, vibration, air pollution during the construction phase, and damage to property is not a material planning consideration. Just thought I'd provide some more details just on the proposed use. So at present there are 147 rooms on the site. That would increase to 408. The applicant, as part of the planning process, has had to provide evidence and need for an increase in student numbers and accommodation, and they provided letters and details from the St John's College, Newnham, the Sir Isaac Newton Institute of Mathematics, and Lucy Cavendish College. The use of it being used by students would be secured by planning obligations and the Section 106 agreement. The out-of-term use would also be the same, as would be academic staff and visitor. All of that would be secured through a planning obligation and Section 106 agreement. A student management plan has been submitted. Once again, officers have requested additional details as part of a condition, just to ensure that there's no harm to the amenity of neighbours. There's been no objections from any statutory consultees, apart from Anglian Water, who have raised a temporary holding objection. Details of that is located within the officer's report. There's been a number of third-party objections, 21 objections, and there's been one comment. Once again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. It is located within the officer's report. Each has been assessed throughout the officer's report. There's been objection from Councillor Rees. There's been a comment made by the North Newnham Residents Association, and there has been an objection comment from CamCycle as well. Once again, I'm not going to go through these in detail. It is all contained within the officer's report. Just to summarise, so officers are recommending approval, subject to conditions in Section 106. In terms of the reasons for approval, the officers consider the proposal provides an identified need for student accommodation. The provision of staff accommodation and academic visitors would release pressure on the private housing market. The proposal will not result in harm to the immediate setting of the site or wider conservation area. It would not harm the amenity and living conditions of neighbouring or future occupiers, and there are no highway safety concerns. However, in regards to potential reason for refusal, it's an intensification of the use of the site and construction impacts. That is everything, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. That's very helpful. Before we move on to the public speakers, could I just ask members if there are any questions of clarification, and also remind you, you've already had the amendment sheet electronically, but Matt has kindly printed it out just in case, and we've also had the speakers' statements electronically and I believe on paper, so I just make sure everybody's read those, please. So questions of clarification, they should be brief, factual, and relating normally to Tom's presentation, if there's anything you're not sure about or you think is missing. So does anyone have anything they want to clarify? Oh, Councillor Illingworth, go ahead.
Just a very small point, Chair, thank you. The proposed users on your screen did not include Anglia Ruskin, but I note that the objectors have said Anglia Ruskin students are included. Can you just clarify that?
Thanks, Tom.
Sorry, thanks, microphone's playing up. Yeah, so the need identified by the college and the applicant only relates to students from the colleges as set out, whilst there is the request for flexibility by the applicant so that potentially in the future Anglian Ruskin students could use the site. the need identified is only that through those colleges. So the Section 106 agreement would likely include the provision for Anglia-Ruskin students. Now the requirement for that is because in terms of the viability of the site and for the future, it would be unreasonable for us to restrict it to students of those colleges only and for it to be a specific personal permission relating to that. Yeah, I think hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom, Councillor Baker.
Thank you for excellent report. Just a clarification in regards to council tax. Because it's student accommodation, I assume that there's no council tax paid on this building. And my other point is, if the accommodation is going to be rented out during the 26 weeks that the University of Cambridge is not in session, will that then change the levy for council tax to business tax? And if accommodation is being rented to Anglia-Ruskin, will that also change the circumstances? Thank you.
Tom, are you happy to take that?
Yeah, so so I'm just making sure it works. So in regards to council tax, I can't comment on that. That's not a planning matter. In regards to council tax, all I can do is offer an answer regarding the use of the site, but I couldn't comment on council tax. That's not a planning matter.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions for clarification. So we will now move on to our public speakers. So firstly, we have two people speaking in objection who will share 3 minutes between them. I think that's Professor Geoffrey Meeks and Dr. Jacqueline Meeks. It's entirely up to you how you share the time and who goes first. And Matt will ding a bell when you have 30 seconds remaining. Yeah, feel free to have a test before we start the clock. Do just put it on and see.
Can I be heard now? Yes.
Perfect. I think just keep it quite near to
Yes.
yourself, as that seems to be
I'll
most
stand
effective.
up.
Would you
Yes.
like to test the other one, Professor?
Can you hear me?
Not quite. Maybe bring it a little.
Can you hear me now?
Not. Chris, could we maybe turn it up a bit? Chris is going to come and sort it out for you. Better to do it now than in the middle of your time. Oh, okay. Right, I'll turn mine off now. You try yours.
Now?
Got me? Yes.
That's perfect. So yeah, whenever you're ready, we'll start the clock. Thank you very much.
Ready now. We're speaking on behalf of a large group of residents living in social housing and owner-occupied housing near Wolfson Court. We do support getting Wolfson Court back into college use. It shouldn't be left decaying as it has been. But this isn't the right way to do it. A more modest scale of building would be appropriate to this residential area. Basic refitting of existing buildings would be appropriate for the planet. We agree with the design review panel that reuse comparisons were somewhat skewed by the initial brief. Changing a college campus of 147 rooms into 408 curiously double-bedded rooms is a massive increase of accommodation, not replacement. Policy 46 says scale and impact on local amenity count. We disagree with the report's view that there will be little impact and that occupancy can be well managed for local amenity. Need for the student accommodation was identified from 3 close-by colleges, already a tricky shift from single ownership. But now the applicant seeks to open accommodation to all of Cambridge University and Anglia-Ruskin and any of their associate or affiliated entities. This is from the heads of term. The application has morphed into a monster. Management suitable to the context then looks virtually unworkable. It's highly problematic for the 3 colleges, with only CCTV and porters to monitor occupancy agreements. Gone, according to the student management plan, is the authoritative wardening that Girton had in place, and the old secure perimeter the police still recommend. And the communal dining facility is for the chop, so what will prevent the nighttime quiet hours at Cockcroft Place's 60 disregarded homes being shattered by students or summer edu-tourists trailing raucously past going to and from alcohol and catered food.
As Clough and Rees will discuss confusions on student occupancy that undermine confidence in the proposals, and amenity advantage in the whole year postgraduate occupancy sometimes suggested by the applicant, lucrative educational lets can be transferred elsewhere. If building goes ahead, a bespoke arrangement for vibration risk is needed, with frequent monitoring and reporting of vibration, as at Alston Croft, and perhaps stricter than standard limits because of the unusual Galt playground conditions. These should be noted in the condition to ensure those without local experience are aware of them. Then there's traffic. The University Maths faculty, CamCycle and local residents all agree construction vehicles will make Clarkson Road unsafe for cyclists. Neither application nor report pay attention. Members are urged to insist on stronger safety measures being introduced. If permission is given in spite of the harms, we ask the committee to keep oversight of Section 106 arrangements and the signing off of all conditions relating to our many serious concerns. Thank you.
Perfectly timed. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. I'll just let you move away from the public speaking table, and we'll now move to the agent for the applicant, I believe, who will be speaking in favour. James, is that right? Thank you. Again, do you want to just test your microphone? Yeah, it's a bit of an art.
Can you hear me now? Yep.
Everyone happy with that? Yep, that's brilliant. So whenever you're ready, again, you'll get 3 minutes, and Matt will ding a bell when you've got 30 seconds remaining. Thank you.
Thanks. We recognise that this is a significant development and wanted to use this opportunity to outline some of our key approaches. Our first step, as discussed, was to investigate whether the existing buildings could be retained. A number of detailed options were considered, and as the Council's Sustainability Officer has reported, and I quote, there are a number of significant constraints that limit the ability to retrofit these existing buildings. Once the buildings are removed, we plan to reuse some of the roof timbers and crushed brick on the site, and we are also examining ways to reuse the roof tiles to clad the new bike and bin stores. A reused materials management plan is secured by condition, and Sustainability Officer concludes that, again I quote, this approach is fully supported. It, as we have heard, is a deep site located between St John's School and the Maths Institute, with only 3 residential properties directly abutting it. The proposed buildings are comparable in height to the existing ones, with taller elements in the middle of the site and stepping down to 2 stories on the facing to Clarkson Road. The integrated landscape will provide 13.4% biodiversity net gain, whilst reducing car parking on the site from 52 spaces to 20, 10 of which were for the retained nursery. The proposals incorporate 274 covered and secured cycle parking spaces, along with 86 visitor spaces. Overall, the scheme reflects the character of the West Cambridge Conservation Area and is of a quality that is supported by the design review panel. The level of proposed development is consistent with other student schemes in similar locations and will sit within an extensive landscape setting. The proposals will make better use of the site and is a sustainable location close to the colleges that it will serve. The rooms for Newnham and St John's, and a number of those for Lucy Cavendish, are intended to be for postgraduates. Rooms for the I&I will be for academic visitors. This means that most rooms will be occupied throughout the year. Outside term time, rooms may be used by conference delegates and those attending educational courses, and we will be preparing a management plan for delegates as required by the conditions. We can also confirm that the rooms will not be utilised by tourists or as an apart hotel. Throughout the design process, we have engaged extensively with the local community using a variety of means, including exhibitions, drop-in sessions, and a dedicated website. The proposals include a porter's lodge that will be operated 24/7, and the applicant has extensive experience of managing student accommodation, experience that will be embedded in the detailed student management plan. And it is worth noting that recently has been awarded a CFCI Neighbourhood Award for its project at Hinsley Lane. Every effort will be made to minimise disruption caused by construction, and a detailed construction management plan will be secured by condition. In conclusion, the planning application has benefited from lengthy and detailed discussions and is recommended for approval with positive support from officers as well as County Council Highways. It will be a high-quality scheme that will deliver significant benefits to this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very accurate timing, everybody who spoke. We now move to the ward councillors. So we have Councillor Hugh Clough, who's the city councillor, and Councillor Peter Rees, who's the county councillor, both for Newnham. I think Councillor Clough is coming first, I'm guessing. Again, if you could just test your microphones before we start. You have unlimited time, although given the heat and the length of the meeting, I'd be very grateful for brevity. Thank you very much. Councillor Clough, are you going first?
Is this audible? Can you all hear me? Okay, I'll try and focus on that. Okay, so one minor point before I start. I was just asked, passed a note by a colleague saying, although the buildings were referred to as 3.5-storey, in fact they are true 4-storey with the top story includes in the roof. Okay, so I'm speaking today as ward councillor for Newnham Ward. I come to speak alongside the Joint Objectors Group and thank the residents of Clarkson Road and Cockcroft Place for all their hard work on raising the concerns with this proposed development. I'm not going to repeat all the matters covered by the residents group, but there are going to be some points that I will be reinforcing and asking the planning committee to consider very carefully. No one is against new residential accommodation for students. They need housing as much as anyone, and providing purpose-built accommodation takes the pressure off the general housing market in the city. Neither is anyone against making best use of existing development land in the city. However, the planning committee will be aware that this is a quiet, mainly residential area. Quiet hours are strictly observed at Cockcroft Place, 20 paces away. There are the maths buildings adjoining Wolfson Court, but they are masked by a belt of trees and purely for teaching and research, not accommodation. So this is a very sensitive location within the West Cambridge Conservation Area. The scale of development increase at the site is huge, 3 times the size of the existing scheme. I understand it will be one of the largest freestanding student accommodation sites in Cambridge, and it is arguable that this location is not appropriate for so large a student hostel at all. It surely cannot be an acceptable development without a bespoke set of controls and protections. These are going to be needed if permission is given in order to manage both the construction and occupancy phases to ensure the adverse effect on local residential amenity during construction and afterwards is contained. The applicants have attempted to make the case for this development. As the local plan, Policy 46, requires, based upon one set of potential occupiers, 3 university colleges, the Isaac Newton Institute of Mathematics. Now, without explanation, they ask that they are not restricted to just those occupiers. They seek the widest definition of occupiers from both Cambridge and Anglia Ruskin universities, plus academic staff, academic visitors and associated institutions and affiliates from both universities. They also seek a flexible vacation occupancy for what might be much of the accommodation, with occupancy loosely linked with any of that extensive list of institutions. It will be important that the committee is clear with the applicants that the extent of occupancy must be compatible with this sensitive location. I am with the residents in being concerned at the wide range of potential occupiers and how any management controls split between any such number and variety of institutions could be effective in such a potentially mixed community of residents. The institutions requested should certainly not include ARU. That institution is too remote from the site and its inclusion would not accord with the local plan Policy 46, or, worryingly, the open-ended category of affiliates. It also appeared initially that the student occupiers would be exclusively postgraduate, and the original officer recommendation was similarly based on reporting that accommodation was postgraduate. But once again, the applicant has altered the target, and now there are contradictory statements. One, in the July letter appended to the officer's report, expects the majority of rooms to be taken by graduates during the to be taken by graduates throughout the year. But another, referenced in the same letter, distinctly states that most of the rooms will be taken by Lucy Cavendish, and that is 3/4 of the site, which are likely to be undergraduates. Other sites have bespoke occupancy restrictions reflective of their sensitivity. E.g. Alston Croft is limited primarily to postgraduates from a single college. The applicant has quoted examples elsewhere of the flexibility being asked for here, but sites do not directly compare with Wolfson Court. in its Clarkson Road, Cockcroft Place setting in terms of either scale of development or sensitivity of location. Also, the officer recommendation has been based on information that students would be overseen by wardens, but again, the application is disappointingly muddled, with some documents mentioning them, but the recent student management plan, so they are saying they're not needed. Wardens surely would be needed to help control behaviour on a site with so many students. They would support student welfare too. Here is insufficient information on which institution will be responsible for adequately staffing of a Porter's Lodge and achieving enough security without the gated entry the police have recommended. In general, the way in which critical information on site occupancy and student management has moved around during the application make it difficult to rely or be reassured by it. For these reasons, the Planning Committee is asked to make sure that the breadth of occupant flexibility asked for at Wolfson Court needs to be limited and to reflect the sensitive location. And controls such as wardens, porters' lodges, as we've seen, and gated security need to be in place at appropriate operational levels. So it seems to me that the plan the planning application is still evolving, and until the planned occupation of the site is settled, I would think that it should be deferred. This is not a matter for condition, it goes to the heart of the application. Now moving on, and if this application were to be approved today, I would also like to request something to be changed or additional work to be done in relation to condition 32, which is the demolition and construction plan. So on the draft condition 32, I think it's not been made clear that there are sensitive receptors both at Cockcroft Place, St John's College School and the nursery. And we found from the experience at Newnham Croft School, primary school, and the Alston Croft development, that these issues have got to be taken very seriously. And I don't see, I don't see in the current version of condition 32, and I would ask the following be added: that there is to be demolition only in school holidays. Yes, there is some reference to deliveries and traffic movements in not in school. There should be no deliveries or traffic movements in school arrival or drop-off times, i.e. deliveries should be limited between 9 and 3 p.m. Also, we need to know that there is proper baseline air quality monitoring that has been done to establish what the air quality is around the site, and then air quality monitors around the site with continuous access to online monitoring for public and the school via the web. And the exceedances of air quality exceedances where there is too much dust in the air should be defined in terms of best practice in relation to PM10 as well as PM2.5. And also there needs to be a working group to be established with the school and neighbourhood representatives to agree conditions in advance of these being presented for approval by the officers or the committee. I've raised these points previously on a previous application and is subject to correspondence with the application. So if it were to be agreed that this should be added to the condition, then you have already got this wording. So I would thank you for listening to my statement, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clough. I'll just let Councillor Rees take over, which hopefully means the microphone will be working. Oh, might just need to press it again until it lights up. It's a bit. There you go. That's perfect.
Hello. Okay.
Can everyone hear Councillor Rees? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Rees.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Members, chair, residents, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking as the county councillor for Newnham, also as someone who's lived in Cambridge as a resident, also as a student in undergrad and postgrad accommodation. So I understand the need for this kind of accommodation and how appropriate accommodation is very important. I have three main points to make, if I may, and this comes out of my discussions with residents who I hope to convey their wishes and needs as clearly as possible. Number one, this applicant's plan for the management of occupancy is not compelling, and there is a risk that the apart hotel model is what this development turns into. I start with this because it's the point that residents have emphasised is their number one concern. So first, the application was presented as for postgraduates, but then this has been changed to about 300 undergraduates. Can I just pause? Is this clear? I feel like there's some sort of feedback on this microphone.
A little bit. I'm hearing it okay. Are other members happy? Yeah, it is a little bit of feedback though, but yeah, Chris, could you just have a look at the... Oh, see if you can swap it. Just, yeah, turn that one off. Try that one.
Is that any better? Perhaps it's my voice. Okay, I'll just continue, but apologies for this, the crackly voice. So it was changed from postgraduate to now 300 undergraduates, and this is a significant change because as the lead councillor, Katie Thornborough, made the point to me that they actually discovered, as Councillor Bajan pointed out earlier, there are these student accommodations that are housing non-students for more than 50% of the time. So are they really student accommodation? That is the question. And the colleges are obviously incentivized to rent the rooms to non-students because they can take 4 times the amount of rent. So if it was, as initially intended, to be restricted to postgraduate students on a 12-month lease, this would be far more welcome among residents and would seem to help to contain these risks of harm to nearby amenity through noise and disruption. Second, the case for this large-scale demolition is not convincing. So ecology is a material concern. The climate crisis has to be taken seriously in our decision-making. And this application has been consistently presented at public consultations as environmentally friendly and sustainable. But my own experience of attending those public consultations is that I asked 3 different members of the applicant team about their carbon figures, and each of the 3 gave me different and contradictory responses. There's also been the use of reporting the carbon data in terms of per room measurement rather than the absolute carbon data for the whole development, which is used to downplay the high upfront cost of carbon of this approach. I'm afraid I have to conclude that this is greenwashing. Did you hear that? Greenwashing. There is an alternative approach which would not use this large-scale demolish and rebuild, which is to reuse and refurbish. There's also a consideration here of student welfare. This is a radical change to the architecture of this area and therefore the social life and that the students or people who live there would have. Instead of having these large communal buildings where there can be collective catering, eating, events, all of that is being removed to try and just have the most number of rooms possible. So my strong suggestion is that there is a deferral to give a serious consideration to the refurbishment and reuse approach, and that the absolute carbon data is also considered in this approach. My third and final consideration, if I may, is highway safety. The risk to cyclist safety during the construction has not been addressed adequately. I've cycled down Clarkson Road many times myself, so I'm aware that in the consultant's report, it's reported that there is a cycle lane on Clarkson Road, and this is false. It's a narrow road, heavily used by cyclists. There is no proper cycle lane there. And all of these heavy lorries going down Clarkson Road with only one banksman would not adequately cater for the safety of the many cyclists who use the route. I'm not alone in thinking this. CAM Cycle have also expressed concern about this, as has the administrative head of the University Maths Centre. So there would need to be a reassessment of the highway safety plan. Allow me to conclude. I do not support this large-scale demolition approach. However, if the committee are minded to approve, I would stress that these significant concerns, occupancy, the demolition, ecology, cyclist safety, the committee should maintain oversight to have final sign-off on the discharge of conditions on what goes in the S106 and the management plan to reassure residents that their concerns have been heard and will be monitored. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the ward councillors for coming today in the heat and speaking. What I'm going to do now, we normally move straight into debate, but there are quite a lot of points raised there, so I'm going to ask the officers and possibly our legal officer to run through some of the ones I'd picked up. I think, Tom, someone mentioned they were double-bedded rooms. I think there was a mention of there not being wardens on site. There was a mention of conditions taking, the construction condition taking account of the clay, I believe, the particular types in the area. There was a query about oversight of the S106 and condition sign-off, which I might pass in Vanessa's direction potentially. And then we had queries about the change from postgrad to undergrad, the expansion from more local colleges to a wider universities, including ARU. And I think some questions about condition 32, which I know also I couldn't see the hours in there, you know, the 9 to 3 construction hours. So that was just some. I'm sure you've probably got more notes, but if you might just start to address some of those, then what we'll probably do after that is take a very short comfort break and then we'll move into the debate. But Tom, are you happy? Obviously, for the sustainability, I'm pretty certain that will come up in the debate, so you might want to hold off on that one, and we'll take that in the main debate. Thank you.
Yeah, very. Hopefully that, no, cool. Better, yeah, no, there we go, here we are. Yes, sustainability, I agree with you, Chair. I think should that, and if that comes up in the debate, very happy to go through that, as I've indicated. Emma Davies, who's the Principal Sustainability Officer, is available, so if there are any detailed questions regarding that, she's available to answer. You've obviously noted some points, so I'll go through those, Chair. There's a few other points that I just want to touch on as well, just obviously from both councillors as well. In regards to double-bedded rooms, from my understanding, all rooms will be, whilst they may have a double bed, would be single occupancy. I've not been made aware of anything other than that, and that's what the applicant stipulated within the documentation. So. Regarding wardens, the student management plan that is submitted, as indicated, is indicative. Officers have still added a planning condition requiring a student management plan to be submitted. At that stage, we will consider whether it's necessary for there to be warden on site. If so, then obviously we're happy to ensure that that is included with any student management plan. If members also wish for that to be the case, we could add an informative to any permission given that requires the applicant to consider whether wardens are would be useful in the site. The same goes for any other aspect of the student management plan. That is still subject to approval via condition, so officers and the council still retain control over considering that. In regards to the construction condition, once again, the documentation submitted is indicative and was purely intended to provide an indication of how the applicant is intending to carry out the construction process. There is a demolition construction management condition which would require specific details of the demolition to be provided. That obviously includes banksman if required, and the applicant would need to provide details which would be in consultation with the local highway authority and environmental health should there be any concerns with that. So they would be consulted and their professional opinion obviously taken out from that. So any details of whether there's banksman or not banksman, essentially that's irrelevant, because if officers and especially, let's say, for example, the local highway authority, when the condition is submitted, require there to be multiple banksmen, then that is what we'd be requesting as part of any discharge of condition of the application. I can touch on the oversight of conditions, but I understand you wanted to hear from Vanessa potentially into the 106. In regards to the oversight of conditions, discharge of condition applications as part of the council scheme and delegation cannot come to planning committee, so members could not determine whether a discharge of condition application was acceptable, and that could not come to planning committee. It would be delegated to officers. Once again, in regards to construction hours, there are, as part of the construction management plan, there would be, and the local highway authority would stipulate details within that construction management plan that it would be carried, the construction and or demolition would be carried out at certain periods, specifically relating to the school and to other residents, and obviously that is how they see fit and their recommendations based on that. But once again, that would be incorporated within that condition. Regarding to the expansion of ARU, as obviously Councillor Illingworth sort of touched on this originally, as indicated, the need has been identified by the applicant regarding the specific colleges. The only requirement, so ARU and Anglia-Ruskin students have been included simply for flexibility throughout the lifetime of the scheme. That is, I mean, we are required in order to ensure that planning obligations are flexible. I'm not sure if, Toby, you want to add any more to that. But yeah, I think I'll cover those for the moment because they're the ones that you raised, Chair. I think there was a couple of other things that Councillor Clough and Councillor Rees indicated. Just in regards to cyclist safety, once again, any construction management plan would have to go through the local highways authority. They would be considering the impact on cyclists and the suitability of that access. But yeah, I'll defer to Toby regarding Anglia-Ruskin students, and then Vanessa regarding sort of any section 106 that could go through committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, so in a moment I'll just hand over to Toby. Just wanted to come back briefly about the conditions issue. And certainly I think it's up to members if they feel there is something that needs to be specified in conditions, we can talk about that in the debate. And I'll then ask Vanessa to have a talk just about the S106. Though I do notice in terms of occupancy conditions, there are some quite clear definitions attached on page 96 of the paperwork. It's actually at the end after the conditions. So I'd urge members and the Ward Council to have a look at that, because that did seem to address some of the issues raised regarding the hotels. But obviously I will defer to Vanessa, who can let us know how that S106 will be taken forward. Toby, did you want to say something?
It's just on the, just a point of clarification really in terms of delegation on conditions. There's not, under the current scheme of delegation, there's not a right for a member to call in a condition to committee, but officers do retain the discretion to bring conditional discharges presently to committee. That may well change with the national scheme of delegation. I don't think we are able to, certainly in light of the national scheme of delegation, which will come in at some point this year, committee may not have the power to direct that a condition specifically comes back to this committee for determination. That is not officer position, that is the government's position. On ARU, I think maybe we'll, and the wording of the clausing in the 106, let's come back to that in debate at the relevant time, but the current wording that is kind of set out as part of the appendix to Mr. Shrimplin's submission is accords with how the council has treated this type of application in terms of requirements and occupancy controls. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vanessa, are you able just to explain a little bit about how the S106 process would work? Obviously noting that we have the heads of terms as well as some of the occupancy conditions in the papers. Thank you.
So if application is granted, I will be instructed to draft, negotiate, complete a section 106. It's basically a contract where we detail all of the obligations that the applicant has to comply with. I see they have helpfully put in some definitions. The 106 will be drafted by myself or one of my colleagues, and that's how we do it. It's not going to be drafted by the applicant. The instructions will give full details as to what should be included. One thing I have noted, and I'm going to raise now, is it doesn't appear to be any reference to a county monitoring fee, and the applicant should expect to see that at some point. I don't believe there is any necessity for the committee to have conduct or see sight of that 106. This is something we do on a daily basis, and it is not a complicated 106. The instructions will come from the officer. All of those will feed into the 106. They are subject of continuous review and negotiation when needed. I hope that helps, but any questions, please do ask.
Thank you very much. And just to be clear, that's based on the heads of terms we've got here, as well as the proposed occupancy conditions, because I think one of the concerns was about the hotel use, and the occupancy conditions are, in my opinion, quite clear that that isn't going to be allowed. But you would ensure that, would you, when you were looking at that S106?
The instructions will be very clear as to what should and shouldn't be included.
Thank you very much. I am going to propose a very short 5-minute comfort break in a moment. Councillor Ellingworth, did you have a point of information before we move to debate?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you did actually mention the issue of the geological substrata, and I think this is in relation to possible driving piles for the foundations and producing remote vibration at other locations. Can you comment on that, please?
I think, Tom, I think we have environmental health with us. Could I suggest, Councillor Ellingworth, would you be willing to raise that in the debate shortly, and then we've got the environmental health person who can talk us through that? Because again, I suspect that will come up in debate. Councillor Bajan, you want to squeeze another question in before the break?
Whilst we're talking about 106, as I understand it, there's no 106 payment to the local community because this is student accommodation. Is that a variable situation? If it was, we looked at it as a 26 weeks a year postgraduate occupation with student accommodation. Is there a difference?
Thanks. I mean, through you, Chair, we've got to deal with the application as proposed for student accommodation. Student accommodation does give rise to different needs and, in some cases, lesser impacts on than community, because the university or the colleges provide a lot of the care, for example, and social infrastructure that is different to how a private market housing occupant might seek to access, which is the differentiation here. And of course the other temporary uses out of term time, such which are suggested as for kind of conference delegates. I think it's unlikely that the council would be able to kind of justify contributions in that respect, specifically again because they are not residents of the city.
I understand the answer as being precise and within the terms of the application. The reality is that there's 2 sets of 26 weeks. The bias being that it's student accommodation because it's used for student accommodation. And I appreciate that the University of Cambridge provides resources for the people that live there. But does the University of Cambridge provide resources for the people that are going to be using it for the other 26 weeks? I suggest not. And if those people are in this city for 26 weeks a year, then we have to, as a council, provide additional resources. Now, I realise that this is on the cusp, but I think this is something that we've raised before as a planning committee, because we think there's at this juncture here, it's an unfairness. If you're going to run it as a business for 26 weeks a year and then run it as a business for running a university for the other 26 weeks a year, there is a whole question of council tax, which we don't cover, and 106 money, which we do cover. And I think that I'm just raising this as an ongoing debate, which is going to accelerate and create more of a wave, because...
Maybe straying a little into debate here, Councillor Bajan. I think council tax isn't due on temporary residents, I believe, but I may be wrong. I think the question for officers, presumably, is there a policy at the moment that insists on a higher contribution for the S106? I believe in the new emerging local plan we are considerably more robust in our response, but my understanding is at the moment there isn't, but I will defer to officers who will probably correct me if I'm wrong. Toby, do you want that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because kind of temporary visitors out of term time would have an impact on streets and public realm, perhaps not community facilities, doctor surgeries, educational facilities, etc. Councillor, there's not, as far as I'm aware, a policy hook that we've got at the moment. I do think if the council were to, following the adoption of the new local plan, seek to update its community infrastructure levy, if that does get approved after examination this October, that there is the potential to A, collect more money from development generally, and B, more discretion about how and where that could be used. But of course that may well fall within not necessarily this council, but a new unitary council following local government reform. But I think it's a very pertinent point. I don't think we can address it through this application.
Thank you, Toby. Yes, I think I've shared my frustration on this issue previously, but I do agree at the moment there's not a policy that I could rely on. Councillor Smart, is it a very quick question before we have a quick break? Yeah, I literally was about to say, we're just going to take, we'll come back. Let me check my clock. I can't even see what the time is on my clock. Bear with me a minute. Come back at 2 o'clock, please, everyone. Let's just have a water and loo break. Thank you. And can I just remind... We are live. Welcome back to Planning Committee on Wednesday the 29th of July. We're now at about 2:15 and we had taken a short adjournment in our main item of business today, which is Wolfson Court. We've already had speakers and points of clarification and some discussion with the officers about points raised there, and we're now going to move into the debate with members. So, members, could I remind you, as usual, if you could keep things concise rather than speech making. Questions are very helpful, and I will collect some up and then go back to Tom and his colleagues. We have environmental health, I think we have highways, and we have sustainability with us. Or possibly not highways, Tom is looking critical. Environmental health and sustainability officers if members have questions for them. And if anyone has already asked your question, I'd be grateful if you don't repeat it. Thanks very much. Would anyone like... Councillor Fisher, go ahead.
Thank you, and apologies for being a couple of minutes late on return. I would just like some more information about the demolition options. I know we were given the sliding bar visual for those options, and I would like to know if more work was done following the design review panel who were critical of that analysis. And to confirm that the 1990s extension is also being demolished. So we've got a building that's only 30 odd years old being demolished, just to confirm that that's what's happening. Thank you.
I'll come straight back to that, Chair. I think it's probably best if I'll bring Emma in a minute. Just for clarity, yes, the 1990s extensions are to be demolished in their entirety as well. As I've indicated, there was, throughout the pre-app process, we had some specific sustainability workshops where the applicant put forward their initial sort of justification. We then obviously raised some questions and queries regarding that after some specific data, hence why we then had the sustainability matrix that I brought up on the slide. I'm very happy to bring that back up. I think, yeah, it's probably worth me bringing in Emma now for her to answer that question, essentially, because she's got the... she's the best person to answer. So, yeah, Emma, I'll bring you in.
Thanks, Tom. Can I check you can hear me okay?
Yeah, just keep talking a moment. We're just adjusting the volume.
Okay, and apologies, I'm a little croaky, so if I stop...
That's great. We can hear you, so yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Emma.
Lovely. So, yeah, oh, I've got a bit of feedback. I think that's gone now. Lovely. Yeah, so as Tom has set out in his earlier presentation, I think from the very start of our pre-application discussions, we were very keen to understand what options had been considered to reuse the existing buildings. So the kind of the sliding graph that Tom set out, that's a very high level summary of the 4 different options that were assessed, and it takes you through a range of different planning considerations, which does include carbon. And I would just like to pick up on the earlier point made during the councillor queries. There was a point about absolute carbon not having been considered and a per bedroom figure only being considered. It has considered absolute carbon as well. So within this graph, there is data in there for upfront carbon in kilograms of CO2 per metre squared, and there is also a total whole life carbon figure, again using that kilograms of CO2 per metre squared. That aligns with the kind of industry standards for whole life carbon. Just going back to the 4 approaches that were considered. So approach 1, that is your basic retrofit option. So that is looking at refurbishing all of the existing buildings to bring them up to current standards for student accommodation. Effectively, that involved knocking through to make all of the bedrooms en suite. One thing to point out with the existing structures, all of the walls are structural walls. So with any approach that would involve retrofit and knocking through to create rooms, you would have had to put probably structural steels back in to reinforce the structure. So that was approach 1. That's your kind of basic retrofit option. We then looked at approach 2, which was effectively extending and altering existing buildings with a few new build residential buildings as well. We looked at approach 3, which was something we asked the college to look at, which was retaining the existing library building but with new residential buildings. And then approach 4, which has ended up being the preferred approach, which is demolition and then complete new build. There were various reasons for ruling out the various retrofit options. As I've mentioned already, the structure of the existing early phase buildings does mean that you would need to put quite a lot of structural steel in, which has its own embodied carbon impacts. There are issues around fire safety and length of corridors. I believe there are also some issues with the existing 1990s building because it's set across multiple levels. That created some challenges around accessibility. So that would have required the loss of a number of rooms in order to put a series of lifts in. But as I say, these were all discussed as part of our very early pre-app discussions. We then kind of moved on to, well, if you're not able to retain and refurbish the existing buildings, what are you able to do in terms of using them as a material source? So are you able to reuse and recover materials within those buildings? So there has been a lot of work carried out looking at how much of the timber could be reused, how you could possibly reuse some of the masonry and the existing concrete, and also looking at, I think, reusing the roof tiles as well. So we have carried out quite a lot of work. We are working in an interesting policy environment in that we don't have any existing policy on the issue of embodied carbon at the moment. But what we've tried to do with the approach that's been taken here is to kind of mirror the process that is coming through in the emerging local plan. I'm hoping that is a useful response.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fisher, did you want to come back to that? Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I just wanted to get some clarity on the panel's sentence that says the embodied carbon studies apply the same intensive retrofit standard as the new build brief, which somewhat skews the comparison. Could you speak more to that?
I'm not a panel. I can only assume that what they were referring to there is almost looking at whether because of the metrics that are used for operational emissions, they kind of follow the passive house approach. So I do wonder if that maybe relates to possibly looking almost at NFIT levels of performance under the retrofit. That would be my best guess. As I say, I wasn't at panel, so I wasn't party to what the presentation was, but I would assume it's something along the lines of trying to get those energy metrics like space heating demand, energy use intensity, those sorts of metrics, so probably aligned with NFIT.
Right, I just have one more question, which is about, well, I have a few more questions, but not related to this, which is about the proportion of the materials. So you said some research has been done into which materials can be reused. Is there a fixed percentage of existing materials that we're claiming to use?
It varies by material. So the work that's been carried out by Smith & Woolwork, they've identified that up to 47 tonnes of roof timbers could be reused. I don't know what the overall figure is, and I have to apologise, our system's gone down, so I can't get the actual report open. But yeah, we're looking at up to 47 tonnes of roof timbers. They were looking at reusing a total of around 2,108 metres cubed of crushed brick and block and 1,271 metres cubed of concrete. So that all helps to reduce the amount of materials that need to be brought on site. I don't have the proportions to hand, unfortunately. They're also, as I say, they're looking at whether they can reuse the concrete roof tiles in the external walls for things like the gardeners' compounds and the bike and the bin stores. So some useful kind of levels of reuse there.
Thank you very much, Emma. Tom, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I didn't have anything more. I think Emma covered the points as clearly as I could have.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Illingworth, Councillor Smart.
I just wanted to continue on the refurbishment aspect of this development. So am I right in thinking that all the refurbishment approaches would have produced, how many is it, 408 bedrooms? Or would it have produced a lot less, especially if some of the existing bedrooms are being converted into ensuite bathrooms?
Tom, do you want to take that? I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, you can't see from the slide because it's so small, but it is detailed in the plans pack, that basically only approach 4 would have provided the current number of rooms. Approach 1 would have provided 145 bedrooms, so that would have been a loss of 2. And that was approached, and as Emma said, that was the just standard retrofit. Approach 2 would have provided 230 bedrooms, so that's about half what we've got here. And then approach 3 would have only provided 280 bedrooms. So that has also formed part of that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smart.
So just in general, it seems to me that the scheme gives a pleasant architectural design and composition, an attractive looking scheme. On sustainability, it's a interesting point that challenges me, I think, is the idea of reusing buildings, and I'm reminded of the building across the road from us on, well, downtown Regent Street, where the Sustainability Centre, I think, reused the building, put new windows in. I think that's a really good result that they and we got as a planning committee. I think the only way we're going to get buildings reused is when there's legislation to make developers do that, and there isn't that at the moment, so we are where we are. One question for you, Emma, I think, or the case officer, and possibly you, is, you know, it's a BREEAM Excellent proposal, which is great, but you know, a lot of that calculation is about the ongoing carbon costs of the building, as far as I understand. Seems to me that that's a given. Any developer, especially a developer that's going to use the building themselves, is going to want to make a building that's cheap to run, so lower heating costs, that kind of thing. So we shouldn't even be rethinking about that. That should just happen. It's the carbon that goes into the building in the first place that we can really challenge, and we don't seem to have that. And that's perhaps not to do with this scheme, but it's to do with all schemes, because they all end up being cementitious kind of construction of brick, concrete, etc. So I don't know, Emma, whether you want to comment on that, and just also, you know, in terms of planning anyway, buildings tend to be replaced with bigger buildings. That's the way of the world, whether we like it or not. So we've got a 300% increase in capacity in this building from 147 to 408. Rooms, and that's where we are. And I don't know if I really want to challenge that, because although in the past I've challenged whether building more student accommodation really does relieve pressure on housing in the city for residents, not students, I think in the current climate, where we're getting a lot of criticism of HMOs and that kind of thing, which can be a component part of student accommodation in the city, we really do want to build student accommodation, or want others to provide student accommodation, you know, new build, because it really does help the situation, and we appreciate Cymru City Council's position here. Just finally finish on a couple of small points. So I think we need to be practical, make evidence-based decisions, but there have been comments along the way on this scheme about young people and young people drinking and making noise and such like. This is contrary to the Equality Act 2010, and I'll have none of it. we all misbehave on occasion at any age in our lives. And finally, a small thing again, but relatedly, it's banks persons, not banks men. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Tom, would you like to address those?
I think I'll pass to Emma to cover the question that Councillor Smart was asking regarding sustainability. It was directed at her.
Yeah, I think on embodied carbon, I do agree with you, Councillor Smart. We're in a bit of a national policy vacuum at the moment. We are doing the very best that we can with the kind of policy instruments that we have available. What I would say is the scheme has set, so they are looking at elements of BREEAM. They are also looking at elements of the now up and running UK national net zero carbon building standards. That is an industry standard. It's not kind of national regulation, but they are looking at aspects of that. They have set an aspirational target for upfront embodied carbon, and they are currently a little bit above that. So the aspirational target's 150 kilograms of CO2 per litre squared. They are currently at around 580. They have got a bit of contingency in place, so that will be refined as development progresses. But yeah, I think we're doing the best that we can in an interesting policy environment. I would just put it that way. But they are trying to do as much as they can on that carbon associated with materials. I think that was the main point on sustainability.
Much.
Thanks, Emma. Tom, did you want to pick up any of the other points?
No, I don't think that's necessary, Chair. It was to do with banks persons and then the Equality Act, but I don't.
Oh, can't hear you, Tom. Could you just shout a bit? Oh, there
Sorry,
you go.
is that better? Sorry, the other points were just regarding banks person that Councillor Smart was raising, and then just the Equality Act and students drinking, but I don't think I need to comment on those points, Chair.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other. Oh, okay. Whilst we're on the subject of banks people, if that's all right, just to hold that, could we make reference to that in the, I think it's condition 21 or 22? Because I think having visited the site by the Flying Pig, they are incredibly efficient with their banks people. You know, they are out there, they shut the gate, it almost never disrupts the traffic, and I think there have been concerns from people, so I don't know if other members would support me in that, but I think because of the residents' concerns raised, I think it would be sensible to not just have that as something later. I would personally like to see that. I can see Councillor Smart nodding. I don't know, just so it's explicitly referenced in that condition that the construction management plan should involve making sure there are banks people, because that will be critical to those exits and entries. Yeah, I'm seeing nodding. Vanessa and Toby, are you happy for us to take that? Okay, I'll ask Toby and Tom to just note that, please. Sorry, Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Illingworth, please.
Thank you. It's just back onto the sustainability matrix. I just wondered if someone could confirm whether the upfront carbon estimate includes the carbon in the existing buildings that are being demolished, and also to highlight that the scales are slightly misleading because Approach 4 does have 115 kilograms of CO2 per metre squared more than Approach 1, but they both have they're both green on the bar, just to raise awareness of that. Yeah, if someone could confirm whether that carbon is included in that figure.
Thank you. Tom, are you happy for that to go to Emma?
Yeah,
Thanks.
yes, Chair.
Go ahead, Emma.
I have been assured that it does include the embodied carbon associated with demolition.
Thank you.
The carbon included in the actual fabric of the building or the process of demolition?
I think it does include the fabric of the building as well. But I think the figure you then get for Approach 4 includes the kind of the saved carbon from reusing some of those materials as well.
Thank you, Emma. It's good to see we have a comprehensive audit, even if we don't necessarily have the policies to support it as yet. We're trying, exactly. Councillor Illingworth.
Oh, that's working now. Thank you. Sorry, can we just go back to the geological issues that we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I think that might be best place for me to bring in Greg, who's the Environmental Health Officer. He'll be able to sort of indicate the reasoning behind the condition that's required or has been recommended, and then how we would approach that, as well as indicating especially the specific receptors that I think you're relating to, Councillor Illingworth. So I think, Greg, if you're hearing me loud and clear, if you could just touch on that, that would be great. On the, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Can, Greg? Yes, we can. Unlike last time, we can hear you. Thank you very much, Greg. I mean, I did notice in one of the written objections, something similar came up, asking about whether it could be monitored on a fortnightly basis and whether sensors could be in nearby homes and a contact phone number. Could you just perhaps comment, I think you've pretty much covered it already, but just on those explicit requests, are you comfortable that the condition gives you the necessary powers you need were there to be problems? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Most applicants contact will do a newsletter and also sort of local communication with local residents groups, and we're very comfortable with that. And if they complain to us, we will ask for everything. We don't always ask for up front, but we require on the site of the store, and then because there's so many sites to share, but I hope that helps. But I'm very confident to take control and protect
Thank you very much. Tom, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that, the Environmental Health Officer, I understand, has spoken to residents prior to this meeting, trying to alleviate their concerns and provide some additional details, especially the sort of request of additional receptors being located in neighbouring properties. The Environmental Health Officer indicated to me that that would be unreasonable unless basically proved otherwise, but as Greg has just indicated, should there be concerns raised and complaints raised, then that could be the case, but that's a if required basis rather than setting out at the very beginning. Chair, thank you.
Yeah, you just after these are expensive pieces of equipment, you know, they're 20 grand plus, and they're recording on another 20 grand, so you can't just, you know, do them everywhere, but we do require them to be responsive to complaints as a group of progresses, so I hope that's okay.
Thank you very much. I think I mentioned earlier about one of the speakers mentioned the clay. Is that something Greg would comment on, or is that more relating to... I'll defer to your judgment, Tom, on that.
So I think the Environmental Health Officer, when commenting, was aware of the ground conditions, but the condition in itself is broad enough that it would be able to encapsulate and incorporate all of that. And as Greg's just indicated, that their Environmental Health are confident that the condition would be able to mitigate that, irrespective of the ground conditions anyway. So, yes, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have any other questions? I have a few, but I will defer to Councillor Bage and then Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. I'll stand up because it's better for me. Yeah, okay. I'm a bit confused about this question or this statement I'm going to be asking, so please bear with me just a little bit. I've served on this planning committee for about 12 years. The debate about knocking something down and rebuilding it and the cost of that to the climate would have almost been inconceivable 12 years ago. Now we're really digging into it. We really are looking hard because we're aware. Look out there. Look at the heat in this room. As councillors, we're more inclined and allowed to be subjective. The officer has to follow the rules. I don't very often follow the rules, and I have this opportunity to do things slightly differently. I have some expertise in subjectivity and objectivity from my research, my PhD research. I don't have any expertise or qualifications about planning, so I sit here as a member of the public that's been voted by my constituents to represent them. So I am a bit subjective when I'm looking at this. I'm concerned about the weather outside. I'm concerned that anything we approve that doesn't need to be approved, the effect that will have on the climate change. I know it's only one building, but it's one of many thousand buildings that will be approved in this year by various councils. When I voted to approve the Children's Cancer Hospital, I was definitely a bit subjective. I was definitely a bit more in favour of doing that because it's a good thing to do. King's College Chapel, the solar panels, where I made an impassioned speech in favour of them because it was good for society. It was good for everybody. I visited this site 3 weeks ago, I think it was. It's derelict. It's been derelict for a number of years, I understand. I think a considerable number of years. And now I'm having to face up to a situation where somebody's saying, it's for the students, and only for the students, and there's a almost unintended consequence, it's there to be rented to other people for other purposes. So my subjectivity is honed in towards the students. But why is it suddenly urgent? Why is it here for 400 students? Is there any proof been provided? And I suppose this is my major question. Do we have proof provided that we need, that these 400 units of accommodation for students will actually be filled? Because if we've got that sort of proof, then my subjectivity leans this way. If we haven't got that sort of proof, my subjectivity leans this way. So I'm asking the officer, do we know? Do they need these 400 units? Because this place has been empty for a long time. Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Kat. That was a bit of a speech. You may have added some hot air to the climate change there, Councillor Bajan, but as always, good point. Tom, are you happy to respond to Councillor Bajan?
Yeah, of course, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. Just in regards to how long the building's been derelict for, from my understanding, it was only since very recently that the back end of the so the extension properties were vacated, but at the front of the site where the larger buildings are, they have been vacant for a longer period of time. However, obviously, as discussed, and I think it was evident on the site visit, the building at present doesn't provide adequate accommodation for students. There's significant overheating in a lot of the rooms and a lot of the social spaces. So there is other reasons why obviously the college is seeking to provide a higher quality student accommodation for students. Yes, in terms of has there been proof? Yes. So the college was required, and all this information is set out within the officer's report. Each college, so it was Lucy Cavendish, Newnham, St John's College, and the Sir Isaac Newton Institute, they have all provided letters from their representatives detailing the numbers of students they're expecting to have in, the numbers of students that they currently can't provide accommodation for, what happens to those students that they can't provide accommodation for, and also the requirements for the college and the requirement for the location. Sorry, you're going to have to excuse the music outside. The requirements for the college to want to be in this location. Lucy Cavendish, St John's in particular, and the Sir Isaac Institute are all in very close proximity to the site, hence the reason for including the pedestrian footpath to the north, because Lucy Cavendish is just a short distance away. As I said, all this is detailed in the officer's report. A lot of the colleges, if they are unable to provide student accommodation within their own colleges and their own services, those students essentially are encouraged or required to use HMOs or just on the private rental market, because colleges can't provide for that. So college and the applicant have identified that there is a required need. They've set out exactly what that need is for, and we as officers are content that they have provided a sufficient need in order to justify what they have set out.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's on page 100 of the documents, Councillor Bajan, if you need to see it. Sorry if you can't hear me. We have Councillor Fisher and then I think Councillor Smart. Councillor Smart, would you mind just turning your microphone off temporarily? Thank you. Councillor Fisher, go ahead.
So I have concerns about the quality of living in these blocks. Policy 46F, which is specifically about student accommodation, says that rooms and facilities should be of an appropriate size for living and studying. As far as I can see from the plans that are given, there's only one kitchen for every 8 bedrooms, and there's only one social space, whatever that is, for 70 rooms. I don't see any provision of a living space or any kind of communal activity, and if you're living on the top floor, you have to go all the way down to the bottom floor to get to the social space. This feels like a prime example of another kind of HMO adjacent development that is just not giving a good enough quality of living to the people who are living there. And yeah, we can have the argument that they're only living there for 26 weeks, but why are they only living there for 26 weeks? Because they can then let it out for another 26 weeks a year and get even more money when we're not even able to put a Section 106 on them to provide for the community around them. So if we are treating this like student accommodation for most of the year, we have to assume that students are living in this for most of the year. And I don't think this is a good enough quality of living, and I don't think it aligns with policy 46F.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I was going to ask similar, just what is the policy for student accommodation? Because I think it's slightly different to HMOs, but I'm not certain. Thank you.
Hopefully this works. No, I hope it takes a while. It's all fun and games with this, isn't it? Right, perfect. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Fisher. In regards to student accommodation, there is no policy requirement for there to be a specific room size or style for students. Unlike living dwelling houses, they have to meet the nationally described space standards, and they have to meet those targets, and we'd be refusing otherwise. With student accommodation, there is no requirement for that to be the case. Now, obviously, there is a significant difference between a dwelling house and student accommodation. We have obviously been through this process with the college, and they are I'd say, experts in what their students would want in the size of a room, and I'd expect that they would have spoken to their students and done a consultation with their students regarding the size of rooms. We've spoken to the urban design officer as well, who is on the call, if I can relate to her as well, just sort of the process we've gone through with the quality of accommodation. But officers are content that the accommodation as set out is high quality and is sufficient quality and better quality than the existing accommodation that is currently on the site. Obviously, you're limited in terms of space, but yeah, I mean, officers are content, and it's in accordance with policy.
Thank you very much. Would you like to hear from the urban designer, Councillor Fisher?
Yeah, but I would just like to make a comment quickly, if that's possible. I think because of the wording, this is using our local plan 2018, because it is vague, I think we have to look towards other documents referring for other housing types to guide us on what is a good quality, because it's just, like you said, have they spoken to the students? I was a student. I know that when I was applying, you have to bid for which room you want. People really want the rooms that have kitchens and living rooms and spaces to like live in. And it does specifically say appropriate size for living and studying. So are we expecting that all these students are living in their rooms? Because I don't think that's a very healthy assumption. But yeah, I'd like to hear from the urban designer.
Thank you, Tom. Are you happy for the, I can't speak. Are you happy for the urban designer to, I mean, I think it's a good point about what the room standards for HMOs are, for example, which would be similar. My understanding is they're slightly smaller than these, but I think it's 12 metres for a double room. But again, I don't know if you happen to know that, Tom, or the urban designer. Thanks. Tom, are you happy?
Yeah, I think I'll just pass to Eglay, because we've had some quite substantial conversations over the pre-app process, particularly in regards to the location of the social spaces, the number of kitchens associated with those. So I'll pass to Eglay, and then I'll come back to the HMO room sizes, etc. after that.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Eglay.
Super. Yeah, thank you for the points raised, Councillor. As Tom has mentioned, we have discussed the quality of amenity provided for all students across the campus. And part of the client's brief for the development was community focused. So you have a number of communal rooms and kitchens provided throughout each of the blocks across multiple floors. And also, in addition to that, there are a series of open spaces within a development, which the kitchens and the common rooms respond to directly at the ground floor level. So starting with the open spaces, for example, you have the central open space, which again draws upon the sort of collegiate environment and character, which is slightly bigger in character. And you have a number of social spaces at the ground floor level that spill out onto the court and activate it. Then in addition to that, you have the sort of more intimately scaled smaller courts framed by buildings A and C. And the spatial configuration of those ground floors has been informed by the arts and crafts movement, where the kitchens directly relate to the gardens, again creating the sort of sense of overlooking and sense of community, whilst providing a range of different character of spaces where people with different needs of social environments would need. Hopefully that summarizes and answers your question, but I'm happy to elaborate on any of those points if need be.
Thank you very much. I don't see anyone coming back. Tom, did you want to answer the question?
Yeah, just regarding HMOs, it's difficult in terms of the actual requirement because, sort of as indicated, there is an environmental health room size, and that is set out by the licensing process. I think a single occupancy room is 5.6 meters squared. Maybe Greg, if he's online, could confirm that. But even so, a single occupancy room, even in a dwelling house or in a HMO, the minimum size is 7.5 meters squared for a single bed, single occupancy. So and even still a double bed, let's say within a HMO, and this is in line with the nationally described space standards, that would have 11.5 meters squared. So the proposal is larger in size than all of those bedroom types. So officers are, as indicated, are content that the accommodation would be acceptable, especially in terms of living and studying.
Thank you very much. Certainly, having been on the site visit, the quality of the existing accommodation was, I would say, poor. You know, small hot rooms going onto a very blank corridor with a toilet at the far end. I have to say it was quite retro. Certainly, even for I was a student in the 90s, and I think we had probably better accommodation where I was. I've forgotten who's next. Was it Councillor Smart? Did you want? Yeah, and then Councillor Illingworth.
So through you, Chair, so we had a speech earlier just to say that we don't all agree with that speech, and I think it's important to say that for residents, the applicant and objectors. So subjectivity does come into it to a certain extent, things like architecture, design, although even then we have officers like the urban design officer and design panel, review panel, that kind of thing, to at least give us advice. We can choose to take it or not. But this is a quasi-judicial committee. We have a serious job to do. We've got the National Planning Policy Framework, local plan, local policies, neighbourhood plans. As I alluded to earlier, we have a policy on student accommodation, and it says that we have a shortage of student accommodation in the city. So I'd just like to say that it's not all about us rocking up and deciding what we do on the day. We have a clear steer from government and from our local policy and plans and officers about how we approach these planning items.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. I don't think there was a question there for Tom. Councillor Illingworth, and then I've got a few questions, if that's all right.
Thank you, Chair. One of the objectors raised the lack of a major communal provision. So I'm thinking of a dining, well, I'm assuming the objector was thinking of a dining hall which would provide all residents with at least breakfast and dinner, which is more or less the situation in the traditional colleges here in Cambridge. They suggested that was because the plans would enable them to have more rooms available, but in fact, of course, he wouldn't need to provide all the kitchens on the
question. So, because there are numerous colleges that would seek to occupy this site, in essence, there is not essentially the facility available for them to provide individual kitchen and dining facilities as standard for on-site for their students. The students are obviously part of their individual colleges, so they would then use those dining halls and services at their respective colleges. For example, Lucy Cavendish students could, if they wanted to, utilise the dining facilities that are provided to them at the Lucy Cavendish on their campus. And obviously, I've noted within the officer's report that the proposed users of the site are in close proximity, so they are in easy walking and cycling distance, not even considering public transport. In regards to why there are kitchens, it's essentially to allow flexibility for students that don't want to use those facilities, and if they do want to be able to use a kitchen and prepare their own meals, then that essentially affords them the ability to do so. But essentially, that is the proposal as set out.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask some of my questions, if that's okay. So first, I did want to say what was good about this. I think the reduced parking is very welcome. I think what is really exceptional is the pepper potting, so distributing across the site of accessible rooms, because so often we see one disabled accessible room, or you see a cluster together as if everybody with a disability needs to live together. So the fact, for me, I give quite significant weight to the fact that this, I understand, is now M42, so wheelchair accessible everywhere, but all the rooms are across the site, which I think is a real benefit and not something we've actually seen before, in my opinion. As I mentioned on the site visit, I mean, obviously it is disused at the moment, but the accommodation, it was a hot day, and it was very apparent that it was very, very hot in there, and the quality of the rooms, in my opinion, was quite poor. I think this is definitely a significant improvement. I was concerned, as I have said at many planning committees, about the residency conditions, that this doesn't become an Airbnb or a hotel. But actually, having seen, I think it's right at the end of the papers, page 96, what is proposed, I take some considerable reassurance from that, because it is very clear that it has to be linked. And I have to say, for me, declaration, as you know, I did work at ARU for many years. I rather welcome the fact that a Cambridge University thing is opening up to the other students in the city, because as we mentioned this morning and in many other debates, quite often there's a wall between colleges and the town, and to me, I don't personally have a problem with it accepting students from around the city or academic visitors. And obviously, in an ideal world, we wouldn't be increasing the intensity, but actually if we are going to house students on a site that's already used for students, I think it is a good use to make more rooms there. We've had debates recently about HMOs proliferating across the city where the university are trying to house their students. So actually putting students together in one area, whether they're postgrad or undergrad, does relieve that pressure on the housing market. So to me, I do see that as a benefit, though I do note the residents' concern that it is an intensification. But I think if it wasn't, we'd probably be seeing a lot of the local houses potentially going to HMO use, houses of multiple occupation use. I wanted to ask Tom, there's been some concerns about Clarkson Road and the traffic and obviously any damage. I wonder if you could just offer any reassurance. I appreciate that's probably not a planning matter directly, but whether highways will be looking at that, so if there is damage that it would be repaired. It is disappointing that this is coming in at 110 litres per person per day. We're seeing some really high quality schemes across the city coming in at far lower, and the new local plan will be 90. I appreciate there's no policy difference. It's not something I could reject it on, but I hope the college would note that and perhaps look at whatever they can do to reduce that with better fittings. And similarly, we are seeing BREEAM outstanding coming through now, not just excellent. But again, there is not a policy basis to reject it, but I would hope that that's something the college will note when they're building, the owners will note when they're building this out, because it is possible to achieve outstanding, I would hope. I think that's all of my points. I think my other concern was about the wardens, but Tom has already addressed that, because you said that you're comfortable that the conditions would insist on wardens were that felt to be necessary, because I think that is a really valid point. I take comfort from the CCTV and the porters being there, and then the sanctions any college would have against poor behaviour. But again, I wonder if that might be something you consider more explicitly referencing in one of the conditions. So I think there are only two questions there. That was about the wardens and the Clarkson Road repairs. The rest were more comments.
Yeah, I'll just briefly speak about those, Chair. So I think we can, if members wanted to add an informative sort of indicating maybe achieving less than 110 litres. I know that there's a standard informative that we have as officers that we can sort of encourage the applicant to do so. Obviously we can't guarantee it, but if that would sort of help overcome part of that concern, we can sort of request that. The damage to Clarkson Road, any construction traffic that could or would use that, if there is any damage to that road, whilst it's not a planning matter, they would be required to bring the road back into the condition that it was in originally. So any damage would essentially be repaired in that sense. You briefly touched on poor behaviour and wardens. As I said, the student management plan, whilst there is one that has been submitted, that is not one that we are specifically endorsing, and we've requested a condition or recommended a condition which requires a student management plan to be submitted. I think it's worth obviously noting this, that we will be requesting details of if wardens are required, and within the student management plan, if they are not to be required, details outlining why that's the case. I'm happy to require that as part of any discharge of condition application. I think the only other thing you mentioned was just ARU students, but I don't, as I said, I don't think that required a comment in return or student timings or anything.
Thank you very much, Tom. Can I just ask members if you'd be supportive of an informative to remind the applicants that 110 litres per person might be something they wish to review and bring down? I think we do have a standard informative that we use. Can I take that as agreement? Because I know Vanessa will ask me to make sure we've agreed it. Okay, I'm taking that as agreed. There's no dissent. And I think Tom mentioned the reference to wardens you're saying is in effect already included in that. Do you want to, is it possible to add anything in? Were you proposing or not? Sorry.
Once again, can add an informative, again, just requiring the applicant to provide details within the student management plan as part of the condition to require for them to provide details of wardens, but that's probably about as much as we can request, because the condition in itself is we'd have to condition that.
You're happy it's
yeah,
already?
we're happy it's
Toby and
required within
Vanessa,
that.
your thoughts, please?
I'm personally comfortable either way. If there's either explicit reference to consideration of warden provision or an informative, I'm relatively comfortable with either. Councillor.
Thank you. I mean, personally, I'd rather have an explicit reference to it somewhere, but I don't know if members agree. What do others members think? Would people be happy for an explicit reference to be made to, well, as Tom said, that wardens or an equivalent provision are provided? I'm seeing nods, I think. Yes? Okay, I'll leave that one with Toby and Tom to work out. So we've got an informative about water, and we've got a mention of, I forgot what I just mentioned. Wardens, sorry, it's been a bit of a long, hot day. Okay, is there any further debate? Councillor Fisher.
So we've got an objection from Anglian Water, but it only mentions wastewater capacity. I'm obviously concerned with the current heat wave and the hosepipe ban. I'd like to know when this objection was found and if they would actually change this to reference drinking water or fresh water, or the impact on fire services, because I'm aware that we have a lot of fire services around that are having to deal with field fires in South Cambs, and that there are worries about water shortages there, so I just wanted to raise that.
Thank you, Tom. I think that would probably have to be Cambridge Water, not Anglian Water, because they do the sewage. But Tom, are you happy to speak to that?
Yeah, so Chair's right. Cambridge Water provide the potable water, and Anglian Water do foul water. Anglian Water, and you said Anglian Ruskin then. Anglian Water obviously have raised a temporary objection that is relating to wastewater treatment and the overcapacity of that. Officers have obviously indicated in the report why that we consider this increase acceptable. So that is detailed within the officer report. Anglian Water have been reconsulted throughout the different amendments, the most recent one only being 3 weeks ago, and we did not receive a response. So whilst we have reached out to them for comment, should they have changed their position on the matter, even relating to anything, they would have had the opportunity to do so, and they have not done so, so we have to determine it in accordance with what we've received.
And Cambridge Water, were they?
Cambridge Water aren't consulted as part of planning applications regarding that.
Should they not be?
I'll defer to Toby on that.
Don't think there's a statutory requirement to consult them. They can look at our public lists and comment as they see fit, but they don't typically comment. It's usually the Anglian Water, who are providing kind of comments. Again, they're not statutory, but Anglian Water are certainly much more active in this space.
Thank you very. Oh, Councillor Illingworth. Oh, sorry, are you okay, Councillor Fisher? Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that judging by the CGI slides we saw earlier, I do find this an attractive new development, and certainly a lot more attractive than the buildings that are already on the site. And I just thought the review panel were a bit unfair in saying that the design didn't really accord with arts and crafts design motifs. I thought it did quite a good job actually in terms of the roof lines, the dormer windows, and what were the other things? The steep on the gables, especially the gables, and there seemed to be plenty of gable ends, which is a big feature of arts and crafts. In any case, arts and crafts tended to be much more about interiors and interior design aspects. Just one other thing I'd like to raise, which I don't think we've talked about, is as all these rooms are clearly single aspect, at least I think most of them are, we haven't discussed about cooling in the sort of weather we seem to be experiencing now. And to be quite honest with you, passive cooling, as we know in this building, doesn't really work terribly well. I'm just wondering if there are any plans for active cooling looking forward to the years ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Tom?
So Emma might want to jump in on this because hopefully I'm going to answer this correctly. Building Regulations Part O relates specifically to overheating. So any development would have to be in accordance with that. Emma, I'm not sure if there's anything that you've seen within that you can relate to passive cooling and overheating. Thank you.
Yeah, so they have undertaken TM59 modelling, so dynamic thermal modelling has been undertaken, and they will need to do that again for Part O. At the moment, they're not showing the need for any form of cooling. But it's worth noting that they are installing air source heat pumps, and those can provide cooling if required. At the moment, they are relying on natural ventilation for the ground floor. Some of the rooms, they're actually putting in secure natural ventilation so that those rooms can benefit. We've got depth of window reveal in some areas and some forms. I am trying to encourage them to consider kind of external solar shading, but the modelling carried out to date shows that it will pass the necessary requirements within Part O. So, and I think they have also done a little bit of modelling looking at some future climate scenarios as well.
Thank you. Tom, did you have anything to add? Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Councillor Illingworth's mention of the arts and crafts reminded me, because the arts and crafts was a movement against kind of mass industrialization, more of a way of thinking of design, which reminded me of the construction techniques used in the buildings and the mention that engineered timber could be used instead. And I don't know if that's, sorry if I've missed it in the report, it might be there, but if you could confirm what the structure would be made out of, that would be really helpful.
Thanks. Go ahead, Tom.
Once again, I'm going to defer to Emma on that because she'll have assessed that as part of her consideration.
Yeah, it's possibly not the answer that you're looking for, Councillor Fisher. They are considering a concrete frame, and that does get them kind of close to the current kind of upfront embodied carbon targets from UK Net Zero Carbon Building Standard. It does seem to be that's the standard approach for a lot of student accommodation, but they are still looking at where they can reuse some of those existing timbers as well. But yeah, for the frame, it is looking like, for a number of reasons which haven't been fully set out in the report, they are going for a reinforced concrete frame.
I'm honestly very shocked, like that's been passed. Well, passed by yourself as the sustainability officer. Like that's so bad. I really assumed that, like, we've sat through this whole meeting, I'd really assumed that that would have been taken on board. Like, I really...
Yeah, I do appreciate the concerns. I suppose what I would say is we have no current policy position to prevent that from happening.
Isn't it in our local plan 2018 about materiality for reduced carbon? It is. I've referenced that policy 28 many times about carbon reduction.
So can we all speak one at a time, please, because it's getting really difficult. I think Emma was saying that there's not a policy that requires people to avoid a concrete frame, I think is correct. Councillor Fisher was concerned that might not be the case. Emma, could you, or Tom indeed, could you clarify what the situation is? Because my understanding is that there isn't a policy that stops an applicant doing that, but there may well be in the future local plan, but obviously that's not approved yet. Emma, are you able to just comment on that? And obviously, presuming that that is the case, that was included in the slide you showed us about sustainability with the little traffic light, the green. Yeah, could you just, because obviously I'm, like Councillor Fisher, I'm concerned if that wasn't included in there. Could you just talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the use of that frame is included in those carbon calculations that have been carried out. Policy 28 of the local plan does include encouragement to use materials with low embodied carbon, but it is just an encouragement to use them. It doesn't set specific policy requirements to say you cannot use certain types of frame. Now, we are looking through the emerging local plan to strengthen our position in relation to reporting on embodied carbon and trying to align that with emerging national targets through the UK Net Zero Carbon Building Standard. But as I say, at the moment, we have no specific policy to say to any developer that you cannot use a concrete frame. We can only encourage them to use different solutions, and we did ask them to look at, you know, things like engineered timber, but for a variety of reasons they have chosen this route.
Thank you very much. So yeah, just to confirm, that is already included in that slide though, so they're not, it's not, okay, that's not been missed out. Councillor, do you want to come back on that point, Councillor Fish, because Councillor Bajan was just ahead of you, but you come back on that first.
I've quoted this quite a few times, but it says all development should take the available opportunities to integrate the principles of sustainable design and construction into the design of proposals. How is that not a strict rule? That is just written in the policy. All development should take the available opportunities. We have the opportunities to build with engineered timber.
I don't know who wants to take that one, whether that is Toby, Tom or Emma.
I don't, Chair, through you, I don't think we need to. You've had a clear answer from officers. That's the answer.
Thank you, Toby. So in effect, the answer is there is no policy requirement because the wording in the policy is about encouraging rather than insisting, which again is something I hope we will be addressing in our emerging local plan, and I think we already are. Councillor Bajan.
Thank you, Chair. If we were to turn it down to encourage the developer to use a different method than concrete, would that be legitimate?
I will defer to Toby, but I think it relates to whether we have a policy you could justify rejection on. But Toby?
I think officers would have to come back and advise, looking very carefully about whether it was. I think we've indicated that we don't think that there is a requirement. There is otherwise an encouragement. Emma is an extremely experienced officer with a great deal of knowledge around sustainability and policy. She's advised very clearly that she doesn't think that we could have required them to amend the nature of kind of construction and construction materials here. I think it's unlikely that we would be able to kind of defend a position. We've certainly, I don't think, to my knowledge, never refused an application based upon the sustainability components going into a proposal, but officers are always asking the question as to whether or not that kind of embodied carbon can be reduced. In this case, it's not been possible, often with things like kind of timber frames, etc., particularly for kind of residential buildings. It can be particularly difficult for that to be secured by developers because of insurance obstacles. It also pushes the cost of those buildings much higher. What we might begin to see over time is a shift more towards use of timber or hybrid timber proposals, but I don't think that it's something that we can insist on. Emma might want to come back.
I think I would agree with what Toby has said. I think our existing policy is unfortunately just a bit too open at the moment, so we do need more specificity in policy to enable us to kind of use it in that way.
Thank you, Emma. And I'm mindful that when officers are giving their advice, they're doing it as professionals and obviously bound within the policies that we as a council have supported and put forward. Councillor Bagent, did you want to come back?
Chair, the officer will know this is not personal but professional. How can we encourage people to use better materials to protect against global warming without actually rejecting something and sending it back? We're not in the position of renegotiating at this committee. We are not planners. We are not allowed to redesign at this committee. If we rejected it on the basis that it was the materials were not aware of climate change, wouldn't that be encouraging? Or should maybe you want to retract using the word encouraging?
I think that was more a general sweeping statement, Councillor Bagent, rather than about this particular application. If you're professional, yes, I think the officers have given a clear answer that there is not, in their opinion, a policy reason to reject this. I mean, how we change that is we make sure the next local plan does have that, which I know most of us cross-party have been doing very actively. But equally, I don't know if I can ask Tom or possibly Emma, presumably this going forward, if the applicant gains permission today, they could not build out with a concrete frame, they could use a different frame, or would that require planning permission again?
Sorry, thanks again. Even now it's the joys. Technically that wouldn't require planning permission, the actual detail of the construction. However, obviously Emma has considered the application based on the information that they've submitted regarding that. Should it be different, it might be that she would have requested different conditions or required additional information. Obviously, if it's going into a more sustainable type of development, it's unlikely. But in essence, I mean, it's something that we can request the applicant consider, but at this point in time, as I said, officers and Emma's given a direct answer, Toby's given a direct answer. I don't think there's too much more we can do unless Emma or Toby want to indicate otherwise.
No, I mean, I take your point, absolutely. I was just making the point, I think, that this doesn't preclude an improvement coming forward by giving permission today, potentially. But your advice is clearly that there isn't a policy defence for rejecting that. Do we have any further debate? Councillor Fisher.
I still feel like no one's really acknowledged what I just said. I've literally quoted from the policy, which states that all development should take the available opportunities. Like, how can it not be more explicit than that? It's like there is no encouragement in that sentence. There's no word encourage in that sentence. This is page 108.
Could you just say,
of the local
just clarify
plan.
which policy, just so the
Local Plan 2018, page 108, the bottom paragraph, Policy 28.
Policy 28, which is?
Carbon reduction, community, energy network, sustainable design and construction and water use.
Excellent, thank you. Tom or Emma, do you want to come back to Councillor Fisher? That would be helpful. Up to you, Tom, who wants to take that?
I've just put the policy on the screen for members to look at, just so that there is no questions or queries regarding the actual wording and content. As sort of I think Emma's given a clear answer. Whilst I understand it does say should, it is a should, it isn't a must. It isn't a more specific word than that, as Emma's indicated. It does give a degree of flexibility within it. As discussed, we as officers have questioned and queried the sustainability approach of the applicant and all the necessary steps in regards to that. We are content with the information that's been submitted and that it is in accordance with this policy. I appreciate that you may take a bit different view on that, Councillor, but at this moment in time, that's officers' thoughts.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for putting the policy off. It's always easier to see it. Councillor Fisher.
I don't understand what's the point of having this policy. Like, why do we bother? Why are we here? Like, what the hell?
It's very existential.
But it's true. You know, we've got wildfires burning across Europe. We're running out of water. Like, we are in the midst of climate collapse, and we've got a climate policy that we can't even speak to hold one of the largest developers to account. It's crazy. It's insane. Okay, whatever. I've made my mind up.
I think, obviously, it's up to every member to vote the way they want. For me, it's about the balance, you know, and what policies we've got, if that's any help to add to the debate, you know, because there are some very positive things here. There are some negatives as well. And again, I'm learning from the development of the new local plan, there is a difference between should and must. And that, again, I think is something we need to be very mindful of when we're going into future consultation. Councillor Bajan, you want to have the last word?
Oh, that's unusual. It doesn't say must, but it says should. And Toby suggested to us that we should not take account of these matters, but this is saying to us that we should. Now, I'm not challenging what Toby says because he's much wiser than me on planning issues, but, you know, somewhere this planning committee has to make a decision about what's happening here. As Councillor Fisher says, look out there. This building won't be built for 2 years. In 2 years' time, it's going to be more important. So should, to me, doesn't quite mean must. But if somebody says to me, you should shut up, Dave, then generally, I will shut up.
Try that in future, Councillor Bajan. Well, obviously, it's up to every member to make their decision. If anyone else wants to add anything to the debate, please do. As I say, I think my position is it's a balancing thing. The available in that sentence is doing quite a lot of heavy lifting, because obviously it's not clear if that's available to, whether that's financially or not. Again, another thing we might want to clarify for the next local plan. Councillor Smart.
A better world, but it's not fair to make up decisions today on the basis of what we think about a better world today, on the basis on this one planning application. We have planning applications all the time over years, and we need to make decisions on good, sound planning reasons, not on a reason that we make up on the date. And no matter how noble that reason is, and I agree with members opposite that the world is collapsing around us, but today we have a job to do, so we should get on with the job and make a decision.
Thank you very much. No one else for any more? Okay, we will now move towards the vote, but first I will ask Toby, as the planning delivery manager, to confirm the recommendation and the several amendments that we've made. Go ahead, Toby.
Thanks, Chair. So the recommendation set out at paragraph 25.1 of the officer report, that is to approve the application subject to the 106 provision heads of terms and the conditions, which are set out in full at Appendix 1 of the amendment sheet. The amendment sheet also includes an amendment to the heads of terms to include city and county council monitoring contributions. It includes, the recommendation includes reference to conditions 21 and 22 being amended with explicit reference to banks persons. And with regard to the student management plan, my understanding is that that is embedded within the 106 heads of terms, so that will provide explicit reference to the consideration of warden provision. There is then a recommended informative for the applicants to seek to reduce water usage below the 110 litres per person. I think there is an aspirational target of 100 litres that the applicants have suggested. So that's the recommendation, Chair, to approve subject to those terms.
Thank you very much, Toby. Okay, can I ask for those in favour of the recommendation to approve subject to the amendments as specified by Toby? Oh. Okay, that's 3. Can I ask anyone against? That's 2, and there'll be no abstentions because there's only 5 of us. Okay, so that is carried. Thank you very much. That actually brings us to the end of the meeting today, as we only had one item. Thank you very much for everyone's patience, particularly in the heat. There is cold water in the machine just around the corner by the toilets. Thank you very much. Could we please end the live stream, Chris?